And you're welcome back to the polls. Now, scores of Burkinabés have fled across the border into Ghana following attacks by suspected terrorists. The displaced Burkinabés are currently camped across the border at one Naba in the Boku West municipality of the Upper East region. Officials have confirmed a total of 2,000 new arrivals over the past 2 weeks. Correspondent Ilyasu Tanko visited one of the camps, hosting about 117 victims, mainly women and children, including weeks-old babies, who are pleading with Ghanaian authorities to assist them with shelter and food.
Over the past 2 weeks, increasing jihadist aggressions in southeastern Burkina Faso have pushed hundreds of Burkinabés across the border into Ghana. These displaced Burkinabés are said to have come from communities in the Sogah department, where armed men linked to the Jnim terrorist group have since the beginning of this year allegedly launched coordinated attacks targeting the security and defense forces, including the civilian auxiliary forces known as VDPs or Kugluwego. The terrorists were said to have attacked the border communities of Zerboko, Yoga, Zebere and Sogah, where they looted and in some cases set ablaze a police station and also ordered the people to end any cooperation or collaboration with the state security forces or face collective punishment the next time they return. Panicked by the terrorist invasion, these Burkinabés decided to flee to Ghana for protection, with most of them arriving in the Upper East regional border village of Wenaba near Zebila in the Boku West municipality.
They came to a place called Zerboko. There's a mining place where they came on Friday. Before the Friday prayer, they occupied the place, according to what he heard from the people. And they have guns, they have motorbikes and everything. They talk to the people that they want those who have the guns, that they heard that there are some people here have collected the guns. They want them and the soldiers.
They are
holding guns, killing people, doing whatever they want without persecution or without law. So that is why they came there. And some people tell us that they are killing people and the people are all running, and I also run. And first they come to Widnaba here to save my life and my family's.
According to officials in the region, over 2,000 new arrivals were recorded in the past weeks, in addition to about the same number already in the region since July of last year. This Fulani settlement on the outskirts of Wenaba village is one of the locations hosting the displaced Burkinabés. There are about 120 refugees here, mostly women and children, including this 90-year-old woman and weeks-old babies. This 70-year-old woman said she was brought here by her children after the attack by the terrorists.
Okay, I heard that there's a people who come, they're killing people, and my people took me and ran and come and leave me here.
This woman also fled from Sogah with 14 of her children.
They came there at Sogah, and we heard that they go and face the soldiers or the police, and they all also run and they go and burn their police station, and the people from all Sogah are running, and that's why we also run and come here.
It was observed that the refugees here, since their arrival more than 2 weeks ago, have been sleeping under trees alongside their belongings with no decent shelter. Ilyasu Tanko reporting from Wenaba on the border with Burkina Faso for Joy News.
Well, the latest on this is that Ghana security and defense forces have taken up a position along the border with Burkina Faso following weeks of terrorism, violence in nearby communities of the neighboring country. The Upper East Regional Security Council held an emergency meeting with top security commanders of the National Special Forces on the grounds to reassess the situation along the border. Correspondent Ilyasu Tanko is currently at the border, interacted with some of the top members of the Regional Security Council and is joining us now. Ilyasu, what can you report about the situation as we speak?
The security have still reassessing the situation along the border. as we speak, there have been men that have been deployed. Already we have men that are already at the borders, but we've seen the intensification of security activities along the borders. What we do know is that many parts of Burkina Faso bordering the country, there have been terrorist attacks over the weekend, and so a lot of Burkinabés who are displaced are currently fleeing across into Ghana, and most of them are currently arriving at the border village of Winaba, where we have security forces currently on the ground patrolling the area. They've also been a meeting with a lot of stakeholders, including members of the Fulani community, because we understand most of the refugees coming into the country happen to be Fulanis, and so the security forces are holding meetings with these stakeholders to ensure that they will help them bring the situation under control.
And I'm just wondering how we're handling the refugees who are crossing into the country. What are the security agencies doing about that?
Well, this is the second time we are having such huge number of refugees coming into the country. Somewhere last year, in July, some Burkinabés crossed into the country, and as we speak, currently, that particular number adding to the new arrivals, we have about 4,000 Burkinabés who have fled their communities into the country, and some communities hosting these refugees. We have tents set up for them, but in some communities, as you've seen in the report, they are currently sleeping under trees. They do not have shelter, and in other places too, they are suffering the challenge of shortage of food supplies. And so, yes, it's been difficult for the local authorities in the area to deal with the influx. And the community members too, as well, are also raising concern about their security. They say they are overwhelmed by the number of people who have come in, the refugees who have come in, and that have brought a lot of pressure on the limited resources that are already in the area. And so we talk about water, supply of water is now a challenge. Food supplies, that the locals claim that because they were taken by surprise, they have given all their food supplies to these refugees, and they are currently running out of food. And so it's been difficult dealing with the refugees in the area there.
Right, and you've been speaking to some of the displaced Burkinabés there. What sense do you get from them, and what are they telling you about how bad the situation is in neighboring Burkina Faso?
Well, at least most of the communities in the Bologo province, which is bordering the Upper East region, as my interaction with the people, with the Burkinabés, indicate that most part of that particular department is currently in the hands of the jihadists. In this particular latest attack, they entered the community and gathered the population and told them that they had heard that some members of the community had enrolled to fight as VDPs, or if you like, fight as pro-government militias. And so they were there to take back the guns that have been given to these civilians by the government. And again, they told the population that they want them to end any kind of collaboration or cooperation with the state security forces. Otherwise, the next time they returned, they were going to exert collective punishment on this population. So it appears that the violence is dripping south, especially closer to the borders with Ghana, where we have most communities in Burkina Faso. The security forces have been routed by the jihadists. You have a lot of communities bordering Ghana where we do not have Burkina-based security forces. And so the pressure has now turned on the Ghanaian security forces on the ground to be able to control these borders. So it's been a very difficult situation, as we've heard from the refugees themselves.
Leah Sutanko is our North-East Regional Correspondent. I want to bring in now Mukhtar Momoni Mukhtar, Executive Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Thank you, sir, for your time. What's your take on the approach being taken now by the Upper East Regional Security Council just to deploy special forces to our northern borders. We're not too sure if the spillover is overwhelming us, but that's the approach the Security Council is choosing.
Well, of course, this is not entirely surprising to us in terms of what we're seeing of the spillover onto our northern borders. And so we expected that this will come to this point, and probably it might get worse, beyond this. And so to see the security within the region deploy forces to the borders, of course, is important because it helps to serve as a deterrence to individuals or groups who may be looking to cross over to this space or to bring the violence closer to the borders. So deployment of forces is important for deterrence, but it's often not sustainable in dealing with these kinds of crises. You need to go beyond the deployment of officers at the borders to ensure that you deal with the vulnerabilities within this local space. And we're seeing the chief and the local community trying to, bring support to these refugees that are coming. And we see that it is not enough. We need to have a very, very detailed and a holistic approach dealing with the situation in terms of managing the refugee situation we are having. And it's very important because I have monitored several media platforms, and there's a tendency to securitize refugee situations. And doing that, it's not helpful. In many places, we have seen where this has led to very dire consequences for us. And by that, I mean, when people ask questions about the situation, they are asking whether these refugees do not pose a threat to us. They are asking whether they are not individuals who may be infiltrating, terrorists who may be infiltrating these groups of people who are seeking refuge here. And that kind of conversation seems to take away the focus onto, the idea that they could be serving as a threat, potential, attacks on us. And it takes away the fact that we need to build a sense of resilience by ensuring that genuine individuals who are here for refuge are provided that support that they need in order not to create a situation of marginalization against these groups. When they feel marginalized and even sometimes targeted, it could serve as a situation of recruitment, and they could, in fact, turn against the local population.
That will come at a cost to us as a nation, not so?
Surely. And that's why it's important that we do not wait. We do not wait till the situation escalates beyond our capacity to handle. We need to come full circle. We need to have, come to a common page. When I say that, I mean the state security services have a template which they operate. We need the local population to be on the same page with the local security and the state security in terms of how do we handle this situation? How do local community members engage these populations that are coming in? Do we see them as a threat or people who need support from us? How do we ensure that we support local police to ensure that they do proper profiling of all the individuals who are coming in, to ensure that only genuinely, refuge-seeking people come into this space? At the moment, we don't have that kind of blueprint to engage the refugees or the security around the refugee situation in the north.
And I recall that last year, as part of your report on violent extremism, you pointed to how porous Ghana's borders could be a factor in fueling what's happening now. It appears that it's coming to play, isn't it?
Sure. When we issued the report in May last year, of course, it led to several other things. Subsequently, we saw the government respond in many ways, including the launch of See Something, Say Something. Of course, this was meant to ensure that we work in the local population in dealing with this situation, in dealing with vulnerabilities, and how we help preserve Ghana against terrorism. We haven't seen much of it, because what is it that we need to see and what is it that you need to say? And we haven't had enough education within the local population on that. The borders have always been very, very porous, and it's even much more vulnerable now than ever. We stated in our report how close Ghana is to the threat of terrorism within this region. And we indicated and we highlighted, actually, that Ghana has been much more closer than ever in our history. You saw that in November, there was an attack on a village called Bitu. Bitu is in the Burkina Faso. It's less than 50 minutes drive from Boku. It's actually closer to Boku than Boku is to Bolgatanga. So that tells you how close we are to it. And subsequently, we had several other attacks in Burkina Faso that are closer to our border. And so all this while, we have always known that Ghana is very exposed and that Ghana is very close to the threat. And so we needed to do more than just having security or deploying forces along the borders. We need the local community to be worked in, to be get on board and understand what is it that they need to play to ensure we do not have the same situation on our hands, here.
The president's comment on the Wagner groups comes to mind at this point when we're having this conversation. Are we having some of these ripple effects?
Well, it's a very complex conversation. Of course, we all agree that this was not a conversation that should have been had at all in New York. It's very difficult to talk about a situation without politics. We are seeing there's a significant level of engagement with the Wagner forces that relates to politics. But more importantly, it has to do with security on the ground.
And my family.
Hello, Mukhtar. Mukhtar, if you can hear me, we've lost you on that point. I was just trying to find out if there are any connections to what's happening in Burkina Faso itself. We're having, for instance, the French forces leave, and the issue about the Wagner group and its operations closer to our northern borders is what I was asking you about earlier.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, precisely. We lost you on that point about the Wagner group and its operations near our northern borders.
Yes, so the point I was making is that we do not have any evidence that the presence of Wagner forces in Burkina Faso is a direct or indirect threat to us here. We don't have that data yet. And in fact, indeed, majority of the leadership of Burkina Faso believe that engaging Wagner forces would be a great replacement or an alternative to the French forces and other forces that have been helping deal with the situation in Burkina Faso. And to the extent that they're seeking, the removal of French forces and other forces that have been in Burkina Faso, to that extent, it tells you how committed they think that, the Wagner forces would be to dealing with the threat situation in Burkina Faso. So I think that we should have concentrated much more on our local initiatives here and also invoke the Accra initiative that actually prioritizes information sharing and coordination, intelligence sharing and cooperation with Burkina Faso and other partners of the Accra initiative within the region. That is a more effective and more holistic approach dealing with the threat. And so we cut out the politics of the situation that could undermine security efforts.
Going forward, what should we be doing as a nation in terms of the proactive measures?
Well, honestly, we've been doing quite a few things well. Just that we've been doing them in a very small way. We need to scale up. We need to expand our engagement with the local community. I've seen the state engage in different ways with the National Peace Council, with the National Commission for Civic Education, and the Ministry of National Security. We've seen the counterterrorism unit of the Ministry of National Security. But those efforts have to be expanded to ensure that border communities and vulnerable communities and the entirety of the Ghanaian population need to have adequate understanding of what the threat we're looking at is like, what roles that we can play in supporting security to deal with the crisis, so that we do not act in ways that undermine security efforts. We need to now ensure that the northern part of our borders, whilst we have security men deployed, we need to have adequate engagement on the ground to let local community actors, religious leaders, community leaders, traditional leaders, and youth, everyone know what role they need to play in dealing with this, looming crisis on our land.
Finally, do you see that we have the capacity to contain this?
It is not the question of capacity. It's a question of response. And we always argue that security incidents or events are less important than our reactions to it. How we respond to it is what determines our resilience and capacity to deal with it. Do we escalate the situation and cause fear and panic and undermine genuine security efforts? Do we over-prioritize certain areas and leave out certain areas? How much do we engage local population? There's a narrative that seeks to ensure that we engage everyone, the whole of society approach. How far are we doing with this? And on that score, I would say that if we are able to position ourselves well and respond appropriately, we would succeed in preventing violent extremism or terrorism on our soil.
I'm grateful. Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director, West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Still